Welcome back to the Super Staff Roundup. We are officially moving into the newest chapter of Dragon Ball Super, and with that we of course have the brand new opening that I sort of covered last week, but we're going to have a very quick run through of that today too. Most of my guesses turned out fine, so I'll quickly go point by point and then move on to the episodes. So the opening action is still a mystery. There were some guesses that it might be Shimanuki, but I'm personally not on board with that. They were based on the stiffness of the action and like one frame of indented cheek shading. The argument makes sense, but I'm personally not with it. Shimanuki has a very unique way of animating that I'm pretty sure even corrections wouldn't mask. Next, we have the Dragon Ball flying into Krillin's hand, which then leads into the gang holding the Dragon Balls too. This scene is very reminiscent of a similar scene in the first Kai ending, which funnily enough was directed by Tatsuya Nagamine, who is also directing this opening. In Kai, the scene was animated by Naotoshi Shida, whereas in the opening it was confirmed to be YUYA Takahashi, which is kind of funny considering people call him Mini Shida. Unfortunately, the next scenes with Goku and Vegeta are unknown. They're very heavily corrected by Yamamuro. Yes, it did turn out to be Yamamuro supervising this, and to be fair to him, he did do a good job. The next one I did cover last week. This is of course Naoki Tate. We then move through some unknown scenes before we reach 17, throwing his attack. This is also Yuya Takahashi, which again was confirmed on Twitter. You can see his typical effects here. I don't think there was really any doubt in anyone's minds once they saw this. Next is Krillin throwing his Kienzan. I guessed Manabe last week, and he did in fact show up on the key animator list, so I'm going to stick to my guns there. Again, more unknown scenes before we head back to stuff we saw in the preview. They're actually cut short here, which makes me think we'll probably see parts of the intro changed later down the line. In terms of guesses, the only one I want to stick to is Tate for the female Broly scene. Speaking of Tate, we then lead into Goku versus Bergamo, which is very obviously him. This is followed up by Vegeta versus the Teletubby? I'm wondering if this is Jin Inaba, as it leads right into the scene, which we also presume to be him just based on the effects. Either way, this flows right into the one and only Naotoshi Shida, which frankly speaks for itself. Next is Ken Otsuka, who does everything right up to the final scene. Otsuka is great. He did stuff in the last opening, he's been on episodes before, but he never really had a chance to strut his stuff, so it's nice to see him in full force here. And lastly, we come back to Yuya Takahashi, who handles the ending. I love this intro, the song is great, its animation is fantastic, I pretty much have no complaints. So let's move into the episodes now. Episode 77. This was supervised by Yoshitaka Yashima. This isn't quite a solo episode, as Yashima's ones typically are. He has one other key animator here, but frankly, due to the huge number of second key animators and a wealth of corrections from the chief animation supervisor Takeo Ide, it doesn't feel like a solo or a duo episode. It just seems normal. Frankly, I don't have much to say on this. As I mentioned, Takeo Ide pretty much commands the entire episode. You very rarely get to see Yashima in close-ups. Likewise, Miyuki Yokoyama is also around and she cleans things up very, very nicely too. It was a pretty polished episode, they hid Yashima's style well, and it was probably a good thing to have him pop up now before the fights begin. So moving on, episode 78, this was supervised by Yukihiro Kitano and Osamu Ishikawa. Kitano handles the first half, and I was kind of dreading this, but thankfully Miyako Tsuji, the chief animation supervisor, steps in full force and redraws pretty much everything. You can see Kitano's very awkward style in scenes here and there, but it's mostly kept to a minimum. Futoshi Higashide is also on the episode, and I believe in this first half he handled the little scuffle between Goten and Trunks. The second half is where Osamu Ishikawa takes over, and while Tsuji still corrects things here and there, it's definitely to a lesser degree. Ishikawa is pretty competent, he sticks to the character sheets fairly closely, but recently he's actually gained some traits that have made him identifiable, which is pretty nice. He started giving Goku a long neck, he's still got the button nose that's always been a trait of his, but now we've got slightly smaller ears and a pointier nose. I quite like it personally, so no real complaints from me. The episode wraps up with the fight between Basil and Boo. This is also Futoshi Higashide. Like the first half, he's not going wild or anything. I imagine the tactic here is to have him stay fairly conservative until he can go all out in a more important episode. Either way, it was a good way to wrap the episode up, and I am very excited for next week, as we have Naoki Tate handling the arc's first match. Considering Tate's style, I'm hoping he gets to do some very fun stuff with Boo, but as the preview shows, Gohan sure looks angry. But that's it for now. I'll cover episodes 6 and 7 next week since I'm away for a couple of days now. If you came over from Geekdom's channel, thank you so much. I will have the video containing the answers to your questions next week too. In the meantime, please do check out the latest episode of Super Supervisors. I worked so hard on it and I'm really happy with how it came out, so I hope you enjoy that too. Be sure to like, comment, dislike, share the video, subscribe, you know what to do, and I will see you next time.